Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk with John Bentley, CTO of 10XTS. Hello, John. How are you doing? Hold on. I cannot hear you by some reason. Can you hear me, John? John, can you hear me? John, your mic is not working, probably, because moderator is letting me know that he cannot hear you as well. No sound. I mean, we know about we have some technical problem on John's side. We are working on this. No, John. Give us a few seconds before we resolve it, and then we'll continue.
Are we connected now?
Yes, now we can hear you. So, John,
All right.
how are you doing?
Other than some audio problems, I'm doing pretty well.
Good. Well, I mean, there are always some issues, and that's our job, right, John, to resolve all kinds of issues. That's our role as CTOs, to resolve small technical and big technical issues. So, John, why don't you tell a couple words about yourself, about, what you're doing, your roles, maybe some history, couple words, just, I don't know, 1 minute, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently a Chief Product Officer at 10XTS. I was Chief Technology Officer, but with my expanded focus on product management and product definition, I stepped into the CPO role when we promoted somebody on my team to the CTO role, which is quite exciting. I work with a variety of other startups advising as a CTO. And what's really interesting is I got started in this 40 some years ago, learning to program on a TRS-80 color computer attached to a TV. My dad actually taught me how to program. So I'm a lifelong programmer, and also probably the earliest ones that was actually handed down parent to child.
I see. Wow, that's almost like a family dynasty, right here. That's good. Well, we actually wanted to talk about 10 STS at the end of the conversation, but I actually would like to slightly change our plans. And the
Okay.
reason why I would like to change these plans, can you tell why 10XTS? What does it mean? What does it represent? And what do you do in general?
So 10XTS is like a lot of names now, just something that's made up, and we design it to be hard to say because it takes a while to get used to it. But what we're working with is about 6 years ago, we came together to do something on blockchain that a lot of people weren't talking about then and still aren't talking about now, and that's being able to settle regulated securities and trade them using blockchain. So this is mirroring the world of more traditional financial instruments and combining it with blockchain and decentralization so we can make it more cost effective. So today the challenge is that if you have a startup and you want to achieve an exit, a lot of times you have to be acquired and the cost of going public is very high. There are smaller things available for trading, but they're not very viable. They don't have they're very opaque. There's a lot of shady stuff that goes on. So by using blockchain and DeFi, we're marrying a private chain that's our cross chain that allows for regulated recording of security ownership that's required by U.S. law. So we're focused on the jurisdiction currently, though we're looking at others, and able to really to transfer that ownership. But then on the at the public blockchain level, like a level 1, like Ethereum or Avalanche or even Solana, or a level 2 like Polygon, that at those chains you could affect and settle trades that could connect to multiple markets. So it would allow a trading system, whether that's an ATS, fully licensed exchange, or broker dealer or other kinds of trading services, custodial services, and the settlement to all happen through standard interactions on a chain. We provide the tools that help issuers create these securities, as well as record the ownership and allow it, over time, will allow it to, you could have a token on one ATS on Ethereum and move it to Avalanche and another ATS and move your ownership over with a click of a button. Things you can't do today. So we're currently in the process of, we have our first cut client who has filed a Regulation A security, going through SEC, the SEC process to be approved. And once that's done, we'll have the first native stock that will be trading on a blockchain.
That's cool. That's pretty impressive. That actually reminds me another piece of information. I mean, during our preparation to this interview, you mentioned that while you are working in digital tokenization domain, you have a very specific view on digital currencies. Can you explain what exactly you meant?
Yeah, when we got started in this, being not like everyone else, I started describing myself as a crypto heretic. And I described that a little bit tongue in cheek, but the things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, these networks have value, and the value is represented by their coin. So a Bitcoin or Ethereum is the gas or the fees you pay to use the network. But the value beyond that is very much speculation. So I was just at a conference telling people that I don't own Bitcoin or really any crypto, and I don't believe in the pure valuation of it, because a core blockchain network, for many of them, can only do two things. All you can do is you can sign a transaction and pay for it, or you can transfer funds. Everything else is built on top. So you have to really ask yourself, is the volume of network activity that's going on in those blockchains worth $40,000 of Bitcoin? And that's why I think you see the variance go up and down. So that's why, I think there's a place for the crypto assets, and I think there's a lot of places for new financial instruments. But I'm also I have a lot of healthy skepticism. I tell people, like, why don't you believe in the value of a Bitcoin? And I tell them it's because I used to own Beanie Babies, and I also know what a tulip bulb's in, which are other examples of highly speculative financial investments.
I see. Well, we might get several negative reviews on our streams after we publish this, because, I mean, a lot of people still think that it's going to grow above, I don't know, 100,000 for Bitcoin. But again, I mean, everybody has his own opinion on this one. I probably will not even express my opinion because I'm not even sure. Yeah, as you said, it's very speculative stuff. So, I mean, making any decisions or making any planning in this area is very tough, especially now, right?
Well, I also, to a certain extent, question the value of gold. I mean, gold as a commodity is used to stabilize, but its value beyond utility is largely based upon the premium we put on it. So Bitcoin can be argued to be the same thing. It's, you start separating the value of the token from the value of the utility. So it's, I have some writings I'm going to be publishing out on LinkedIn here in the near future, giving just some of the basis of why I've come to these conclusions. But, I'm a huge believer in DeFi and decentralized finance and the ability of what blockchains can do. So I separate that from the financial speculation and investing side.
Yeah, well, And we probably won't even get into the carbon footprint and everything else related to these topics, right? Because that's even more convoluted than just financial speculative markets. Okay, so let's go to your day-to-day activities as a CTO. So I assume your company, I mean, it's not a big corporation, it's a more smaller sized startup, right? That would be a proper assessment.
Yeah, we are I would say we're a mature startup that is currently converting into a growth company. So we're in
Good.
that, we're starting to hit that transition of scale.
Okay, but at the same time, I mean, what's your primary role in your company? I mean, you are an executive, you are a hands-on, I don't know, workshop person, mentoring person. How do you see yourself in the company?
So early on, I was more hands-on and actually helping write code when there was only just a couple of us. And now I don't write code anymore. And a lot of that's because I don't have time to actually complete it. So it's a disservice to the team. There are times though where if there's a concept or an idea that I have a little more experience on, or I get a request to create an example of the concept I'm talking about, then I'll actually create it in a one-off of code. Like I'd had some experience playing with logging and some other projects, and I created the first version of our logger, which was by request of the development team, and I wrote it as a standalone, and they took it and incorporated it into the product. So most of my hands-on these days is really writing product specifications. So I'm that bridge between analysis of the market and customers, what we got currently in the pipe and what we see coming in the industry, talking to industry partners, and turning that into a set of specifications and defining the product so the team can then turn that into an implementation and take it down to the story level. Yeah, go ahead.
So your team don't mind that you create some kind of prototype. It's not something that would demotivate them, showing that, well, you're better than them, you can do and they can't. So there is no internal conflict. Everybody understand that, well, it's a small team, something like this, along this line.
Yeah, so I really do it. We talk about the concept and I'll draw some diagrams or some ideas and we'll be, iterating over them. And more times than not, it comes up as a request for me to go explain it in code. And so that's really, I think that the key is that I don't ever force it or even offer it. They ask, they request, knowing they can, and then when I hand them the code, I have no expectation that it will stay the same. The purpose of it is to express my thoughts and how I would implement it based upon, again, some prior experience I may have that the team doesn't have, and then they take that and incorporate into the product themselves, so it disappears in the code base. So it really is that code is more of a communication tool.
I see. Okay, I guess that's a good point. Like communication tool, that's actually a very interesting view on this. But I mean, just slightly one small, I guess, question about this topic. Well, I mean, not usually. Some, I don't know, some people, some CTOs would approach, even if the request came to, I don't know, create something, show something, they would still, I don't know, dig up some documentation. They would show specifics, I don't know, specification, maybe show something extra, but not exactly creating the code itself, writing it themselves. So you don't want to push it away. You don't want to say, hey guys, I mean, that is here and here, that's a specification, that's probably a couple examples, I don't know, from documentation or from somewhere, you can do it yourself. So you don't want to do this, right? I mean, you still feel comfortable to make it yourself.
Yeah. What'll happen is we're generally talking at the diagram and specification level. But like, for example, a lot of our endpoints are currently in JavaScript. And
Okay.
JavaScript is almost a programming language. It's on the cusp there. You add some utilities and things, but there are a lot of techniques I learned in object-oriented programming that the language is very limited at.
Mm-hmm.
But because I programmed in several different object-oriented paradigms, I can
Okay.
bring some of that reuse in a coding technique that the current team members just haven't experienced before. So they want to see the idea of the coding technique. And so that's where I say that's where I'm tapping into some coding experience where I feel not so much that as the chief product officer, chief technology officer, I'm doing this as management. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
this as a member of a team of, here's what I've seen and here's how it could be done here. And then they decide how to proceed with it. So it's really at some point, the only two things I really trust in a system are code and data,
Mm-hmm.
because they were always up to date because the code runs and the data is. I believe test cases that they're actively being used for CI/CD, but
Mm-hmm.
every specification, everything else is suspect depending on the maturity level of the team, the ability to keep them up. So, and the same standpoint, sometimes to understand the concept, you need to see an example in code, and sometimes it's snippets and other things. But that's why I go back to it. This is really where we talk through specification and ideas, and the team really just wants to see a code example. So, I don't feel if they never ask me another code example again, it wouldn't hurt my feelings or bother me, because they progress. But when they're asking for some experience you've had, you want to share. Yeah, my main job is to meet the needs of the team. The team builds the product. I help figure out how to navigate it. I kind of write down the high level guide of what people are asking for, and we work
Mm-hmm.
together to hammer out what the product really is, and then they bring it forward. So it's someone who indirectly builds a product, one or two steps removed. My job is to be a resource to the team first and foremost.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. Let's go to your team. How big is your team? I mean, approximately, we don't need exact numbers, just to have a feeling about your team.
Yeah, I mean,
If you
yeah,
if you're okay to
right,
share this
yeah.
information. Mhm.
Right now is a steady state. We're under 10. We've got we do have a few skill players now. So we haven't quite got to the point where we split into front end and back end or different modules of the product.
Mhm.
So we're still mixing about, but we have separated out Scrum management and Scrum Master and DevOps from the development. So we're starting to be able to scale the team. The next step will actually be dividing a little bit more into front end and back end, just to allow more focus. But really, for us, it's we have an application. We have a core technology we just call XTS,
Mhm.
and that's our core blockchain services and things we built on top of the blockchain. And then our application we call XDEX, and uh, and so we'll start dividing the team between those in our next stage of scale.
Gotcha. Actually, I do have a couple questions related to what you just described. So first of all, your people in your team, are they, I don't know, full stack generalist, or you prefer some specialist, front end, back end? How do you compose your team?
So I am just like I'm a crypto heretic. I'm not. I believe in the full stack developer to a point.
Mm-hmm.
So I will tell you, I'm a full stack developer. And what does that mean? Well, what it actually means is that um, and this is a self assessment. So, uh, but I'm recognized for knowing how to build endpoints, how to integrate with APIs, and how to work with databases. Those are my strengths. I
Okay.
can build a UI. I have a long history in user interface development. But I'm better at constructing the UI, the form, and things like that. When it comes to the UX design and the more visible pieces, while I can do them, it probably takes me twice as long as someone more skilled in it. So while I'm a full stack developer, I'm really a back end developer who has enough experience in the front end to understand it. So we've got our developers are full stack, but we definitely have some that have more strength in the front end and some that have more strength in the back end, and that's what we'll navigate. So I think it's important to find people that have full stack experience, but also know where they are. And like, I get told all the time, we need to hire some UX people so they can build the user interface. It's like, well, good UX people may be able to give you web, CSS, and maybe a little bit of screen design in a mobile app. But generally speaking, good UX designers are not coders. So you have to really recognize where they're at on the spectrum of skills and plug people in and let people, lead each other, so that if someone is really good at database, but, endpoint, they need a little help at endpoint, let them lead in the data, take their lead in the database, and they'll take someone else's lead on the endpoints. Same thing with the UI. If someone's really good at building UI components and reuse and visualizing the UI that way, let them take the lead in that, but let the UX and design people really take the lead on what the user sees.
So basically what you're saying that, I mean, for you, it fits better to have a very well-built, very tight team with maybe some, I mean, mediocre skills in some areas. I mean, like they're great developers, but I mean, they are okay UX specialists, they're great database administrator, but they're okay on something else. But the team would be the same over entire cycle of the product development, and you don't rotate through different specialists, right? So it's just works better for you.
Right. Well, and as we scale, I mean, that's where, so I'm a big believer in Conway's Law, which states that your organization, your products really reflect your communication structures. So do your processes. So the challenge right now we have with a smaller team is that we're building components that are part of an application that sits on top of a platform core. So XDEX uses XTS. Well, with the same people coding all those pieces, and this same problem, just the front and the back end, you start getting bleed over between the two layers. It's very hard to build a clean front end and clean back end that could evolve independently if needed with the same programmers, because you get time crunch. It's just nature. People actually do well with it, but it's asking a lot of a team to scale. So if you really want your components and really getting to, I call our current evolution, we're learning we're now getting to where we can build a spec, where if you really want to define like open API guides to your services for your endpoints and things like that, or decompose your UI into crisp components that can be reused in different ways, that requires having a group of people focused on that aspect of the application. And so if you've got, like, we're going to have like base platform services, we'll have application services for XDEX, and then we'll have a UI application that will be web and mobile over time. You really need people that focus on those different pieces, so as they're working on them, their beginning and ending is there. Now, team members, based on their interest and skills, probably not every sprint, but, say once a quarter, could definitely rotate around and do different things, or you might have to move people to different pieces. But you need a few folks that are leading the design and quality of those, so you keep a very coherent product. I actually worked about 7-8 years ago on a PHP legacy application, which I thought was funny because I had worked on the mid-range changeover from COBOL. So working on a PHP legacy application felt like I had gone through time. And the problem with this app was it was built by a couple of folks. And despite having a good MVC, the view, controller, and model layers were all so mashed together, in different levels of separation of time, that there was a need to start changing pieces of the system, but you couldn't just touch one part of the system. The whole thing was just a big ball of code. And this is indicative of, you have two people that are sitting next to each other writing code that are probably doing their best, because there was some identification of the layers, but when you have a few people writing code, and so that's why as you're scaling a team, if you just go from 2 people to 8 people, which is what we did at this location, and they're all full stack developers building everything, just adding onto the code base, you just get a tighter, more tightly coupled system over time. And it gets very hard to do any kind of independent build. So, if you've start off with a web app and you want to add mobile, if the services really only meet the needs of that web app and there's not a good separation between them, it's much harder to build a mobile app using the same services. So that's where the separation becomes very important.
Okay, but at the same time, for your product, you decided to go with a full stack, mainly full stack people, right?
Well, we're full stack because we don't have enough capacity to split yet.
Mhm.
We're already we already have people that take lead on the XDex front end side and people that take lead on the XDex back. So we're beginning the centers of concentration, and as we bring on the next folks, well, we will go from 1 team to 2 sub teams because we'll have enough capacity for the work to be divided.
Okay, so it sounds like you are growing right now and you will hit some growing challenges. I mean, did you hit already something or you anticipating something? You want to share it with us?
Yeah, we're in a growth mode again. Last year we brought on we rather than adding more developers, we decided to bring on a Scrum Master and DevOps
Mm-hmm.
so that we could start separating those responsibilities from the existing developers.
Okay.
It was the problem of you're trying to get code written and then you have an environment issue, so they have to go off the code and come back, and you have that changeover cost.
Mm-hmm.
We honestly, weren't that good at running Scrum by ourselves, because my experience has been when you're working on the actual production of things that are driven by a process, it is
Mm-hmm.
very hard to also manage the process. You tend to favor one over the other, and typically you favor building the product. So you don't have a lot of discipline. Beyond, I used to say we used to run sprints on a 2-day basis, 2 days of conversation to lay out the work, and then we have the next 2 days. Since bringing those people on, we've created a more scalable structure. So as we bring the next people in, it'll be much easier to start creating these sub teams and really and helping the product as we're transitioning from MVP to a baseline product, which is also going on. We'll be able to get people in areas of focus. What's interesting about growth is so our CTO is still writing a bit of code. So as we start looking at growing, the first thing we'll be doing is bringing somebody on to take over his coding capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So that person will, and we're looking at, we're always looking at a 6-month lag. We figure it can take up to 3 months. This is worst case. Take up to 3 months to find somebody and bring them on, and then take 3 months for them to become truly proficient on the team, adjusted and everything. So replacing that capacity for someone to bring other people aboard. So that first hire will basically stay at the same productive level for the first 3 months. And then we'll bring on the next people, and it'll be another 3 months to really start seeing the increase in speed. We'll see some, but not quite the level we're looking at. And and then as you keep growing, people coming in will get absorbed a little bit faster, and you'll spread the cost of that growth. The other interesting thing we're looking at is, as we look at our product, we have some integrations coming up with other systems.
Mm-hmm.
And those integrations are new to everybody. So bringing somebody in new to do the integrations, they'll have as much on that part to learn as anybody else on the team. So they'll have a place where they're just as productive as anybody else could be, and it will give them a chance to combine that with the existing code base. So they'll have a chance to learn it without having to make modifications to the core. So we think that'll be a much better experience for somebody new coming on. We're constantly looking at our product roadmap and work along with our staffing plans to say, how can we align and prioritize work to give the person coming aboard a great experience, allowing them to feel productive early on, and easing in the learning cycle for a growing existing code base, so that they can feel the wins along the way. There's nothing worse than going someplace in the first month feeling like you're not making any contribution. So we want to help make that. We want to make that a better experience for new folks.
I see. Is your team in office or it's more distributed?
We're 100% virtual. So everybody works from a home office. We're geo distributed. Last year, we got the whole team together for a conference in St. Louis called Strange Loop. So that allowed us not only to attend the conference, but spend time together in person to keep building those relationships. And then we find is that a mix of purposeful in-person interaction combined with the flexibility of working at home and good communication tools, we're still as productive and really as close as any team I've worked on at a physical location.
That actually was my next question. Thank you for answering it. And just before, I have another question actually related to this. Did you start it originally, or it was COVID related style?
We were kind of we were using co-work spaces before, so we didn't have a dedicated office. So I and the CTO, who are both co-founders, our current CTO are both co-founders, worked together off and on. So we worked a combination of remote and the co-work space. And then we picked up somebody that had some knowledge in the industry that we knew through our network that was located in Florida. So we started having a remote team member pretty early. We had somebody else in town that interned with us before him. So we had a shared space for a little while with he and some other interns. But then when we got with the other remote person, we would meet up once a week. Yogesh and I'm my CTO. Meet up once a week just to get out of the office. He relocated to Austin, Texas. I'm in the Cincinnati area. So since then, we've got folks different parts of the country, and we've even got staff in India, so that are working for us full time.
So you can actually compare, I don't know, onboarding in office and onboarding remotely. Any difference in your team, or it's about the same? I mean, any challenges associated with these two styles? What's your feeling?
I think it's actually easier for the younger members of my team who have done more interaction online. I was on bulletin board systems and dial-ups and AOL and stuff. So I've been online communicating, but like I have a whiteboard behind me, and sometimes I draw notes up for myself. I miss having a group of people in a room on a whiteboard, but we've gotten pretty good at using Lucid Sketch to do the same thing and draw quick diagrams and go back and forth with each other. So we've adapted very well. So beyond, I think people overemphasize in office those type of interactions and, the idea of the happenstance communication. One of the things we do is we use Slack as a group tool, and we have a channel open that we just call Chatter, which is just for water cooler type of talk. And before our standard meetings, our agile ceremonies we do going through the Scrum process, we allow some time before and after just for chatting. So the meeting's scheduled for, like, today we did a retro at 10 Eastern, and the first 5 minutes while we're getting in, we did the normal kind of chatting in a meeting room kind of thing and catching up. Then we dive into it, and then afterwards, a lot of times there's some chatter and things like that of just people talking. With Slack adding audio and video, it's a lot easier for us just to pick up and call each other on the computer, so it's very convenient. So those type of things have made it very work very well. The other thing is there are a lot of times in which you had a large amount of staff in office, but I've worked at larger companies where all the staff isn't in one place. So when I worked for Sprint, I worked in Kansas City area, and we had a lot of our development part of our IT in Dallas Fort Worth area. So we would have, your immediate team would be in office, but a lot of people you worked with they were different buildings and it wasn't convenient to get together even on the same campus, or
Sure.
they were, or part of the team was in another location. So we were already dealing with these issues. COVID, I think, really brought it out to understanding what works well, different, remote versus in person. I think, though, the error in remote work is the idea that we're just going to save all that money on rent. Instead, you really need to take a look at the money you're spending on facilities and look at how do you make sure your staff's properly equipped. So this is not just a laptop, but multiple monitors and maybe mounting equipment. I'm sitting in front of a tree of three 4K monitors hooked up to my Mac. So, that's very convenient for me to sit in front of, making sure people have a decent desk. But then adding in travel, we're still getting there on what our best practices are.
Mhm.
Yogesh and I went to Consensus together last week, which was in his backyard, but he actually stayed with me in the Airbnb, so it was more convenient for him, and we had more time together just to talk. So creating those more frequent interactions of being in person and spending on a little bit of travel and creating very deliberate, meaningful interaction. And then it definitely trying to bring in the whole team together once a year just to talk about planning and other things, but also having lots of time just for one-on-one and small groups to get to know each other.
Yeah, makes sense. That's actually resonates with our efforts as well in our company. So I understand you completely here. Um, well, I mean, you are in the shoes of growing startup, and I mean, you probably already went through the first part of the life cycle. Can you, I don't know, compare your challenges with the challenges for with other startups of the similar size, of the similar style? Can you kind of expose what their pain points from the CTO standpoint, I guess? Your insights, your feelings, your understandings about this.
Yeah, we're kind of unusual because and this is where I think the pandemic really impacted a lot of startups. Is the pandemic, we basically just had to keep going at a steady pace. So we
Mm-hmm.
have 2 years of non-growth before we can go pick up a few more team members.
Okay.
So that was a real challenge because we've been at this early stage a little longer than you'd want to be, where you're doing too many jobs, and it does present challenges. That's why we've kind of changed around some roles and things. It's just to make it a little fresher for all of us, and bringing in fresh faces also really helps with that. I think what's interesting is that as you start to grow, you have to really understand what it takes at an early stage versus a mid stage versus what you need long tail.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, you're an entrepreneur and you need people that are very entrepreneurial. You need folks that are very independent and need a lot of direction, but have the
Mm-hmm.
ability to collaborate and align.
I
So,
see.
so you're very independent. And the challenge is that once you get those people, if you still keep hiring them, it'll be hard to create a cohesive group. So as you get to your next stage, you need to really start hiring people that are somewhat still self-starters, but are a little more on the collaborative side and really can start acting as leadership for the next phase of growth. So now you start bringing in, you need to tend towards, I think, more senior people still, or people that are ready for that senior leadership. Always, one of the problems I've seen in another startup was they would go hire somebody from corporate America that was successful in their role in an area that you wanted to build. But
Okay.
generally, the person that was there was a maintainer. They were very good at their job, but their skill set was not creating the process or building the team and leading it. It was maintaining and leading an incremental improvement where they already were, and you need something a lot different. So early on, you need people that can work, without lines and without a lot of direction. Then you need people that can help, that need some direction and can help form direction to start creating that more collaborative work group, which is where we're getting to now. And then longer term, you need a little more structure because you'll need people on that need more guidance. and you really start needing to bring in a mix of skills. So that mid tier, I wouldn't want to hire, for example, an experienced test manager. I'd rather find a senior test person who's already showing leadership, that understands what they like about what they're doing now, but has a passion about how they could do things more efficiently to come and help set up that function. Someone that's that is still a little bit entrepreneurial, but is very much leaning more towards creating a managed process shop rather than just the Wild West, which is where the first of us are like. We're going to shoot up the town, and that's pretty much it. So you need that phase of growth. Once they're in place, though, I've also been on a team where we had 10 people that were all called senior developer, and you miss a lot of things. Actually, we haven't been able to virtual and things and adjusting. We haven't really had a good chance to bring on interns again. And I really miss having the interns and the newer folks, because they ask the questions you forget to ask. And so 8 times out of 10, they're probably asking you a question that everybody else knows and they're learning. But 2 times out of 10, they're asking a question that makes you go, wait a minute, does that really make sense? Where you're starting to do something out of habit and not doing something out of purpose. And that's where they bring great insight.
I agree. I mean, that's actually, your last statement is really a golden mine of ideas and of recommendation for any startup, frankly. I mean, just great, I would say, great insights into the hiring and roles for your projects, combination and balancing between, as you said, entrepreneurship and experience, and person who is systematic, right? I mean, he has a wide view, but again, maintainer and keeping everything intact, comparing with the building it up. Yeah, that was good.
I had a challenge a while ago when I was working at Sprint. We had a third-party vendor application we had to install. And I had put in place a supervisor, somebody who was retired military. So this is an area we needed a lot of creative types in some of the development, but here you need someone that really understood how to get things done and keep them on task. I had another person paired with him that was also former military that was helping with he's managing environments and builds and everything. Somebody doing configuration management, where again is where you need tight controls. Then a couple of other folks that were more experienced, but we needed to bring on, we had a mix of contractors and wanted to bring on a permanent person. So we looked far and wide. I interviewed this young man that was from the University of Nebraska, and really bright young man, but he had this wide-eyed thing about him. And I'm like, if I talk to 10 other students, they wouldn't think they could do what I'm going to ask them to do. But this guy, he's not going to know that he shouldn't be able to do it. And I knew that I knew they even could learn, but he's not going to know that he can't do it. And he's of the personality type where he's going to love being on this team of more experienced people. And we put him on, and he just did fabulous. But, it was one of the more critical pieces that was hard to fill. But it turned out finding the right new person that didn't know too much, hadn't learned things that needed to unlearn, was actually key to that success.
Ignorance is a treasure, right? Sometimes you just don't know what you need to be afraid of.
Yes. I feel like I've passed the age of somewhat past the age of learning. Oh, I'm still learning, but I'm actually at the age of if you want wisdom, you got to start throwing a lot of stuff away. So I'm trying to get rid of a lot of preconceptions and just find principles, and be very open to what, especially folks newer in the industry bring. So, and look at them with fresh eyes, so I can marry it with the experience of the past, but only bring forward the things, again, with purpose, not out of habit.
Good. That was good. I actually remember it when I was laughed at once. I said that ignorance is a treasure. I had some experience on one of my previous jobs. But that's exactly what situation you're just describing. We needed someone's fresh view, and because we were all in boxes, and we just couldn't get out of those boxes by some reason. Excellent, John. Our time is actually, we are almost done. Do you want to add anything about your company? I mean, you did good review at the beginning of our interview, but maybe something additional, something specific you want to share with us about your product, about your solutions, something that we would really like to know about it.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I think as people are looking at blockchain and this newer technology that we're discovering is, and it's really an old lesson that we keep relearning in the industry, which is standards and interfacing is very critical to making things scale. So, as much as everybody's fascinated by Merkle trees and cryptography, the
Right.
Ethereum standard process, the ERC20, which defines a token, and then I can't remember, I'm forgetting what the one for NFT is, but those standards actually do more to make the applications work than anything else. And that's why one of the key component pieces of our strategy is not proprietary technology, but is actually to create an open standard. And once we write a smart contract that settles a token on chain, everyone will be able to read it because that's the only way it's secure. So we're under no delusions that we can keep it a secret. But keeping more of that mindset, I mean, I'm not despite what my investors would say and other people, the VCs and so forth, I'm not a huge fan of software patents. I think we're better off working on open standards or working together. When we bring that approach, to the extent it makes sense, again, for our investors at 10XTS, we even have an idea for our not authentication, but our security authorization system. We have some hopes to turn it into an open source project because we think application authorization is still too much replication. And we have some ideas on how to extend some emerging standards on the resource side into application space that we're real excited about.
Excellent. Well, I mean, that's a great stuff, actually. I mean, we would really appreciate any sharing of the knowledge from this perspective. Thank you very much, John. I mean, again, a lot of, at least for me, you gave quite few new ideas, new, how to say, angles of the view on some problems. So for me, it was very useful. I hope for our audience it's going to be useful as well. And again, thank you very much for your time.
And I welcome any comments or interaction because this is learning. I mean, I tell you what I think, and it doesn't mean it's right. It's just what I think.
Well, I mean, we have our own opinions. And again, I mean, it works for us as long as it works for us, right? I mean, it doesn't have...
Right.
We cannot guarantee that this specific approach will work for someone else, but our experience shows that it does work indeed. Okay, great.
Okay.
Again, thank you, and talk to you later, John. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.